streaming, and the rockets are red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I want to say a thanks to the Troop F Color Guard. We sincerely appreciate your service, and thank you, Pastor Jackson. And Deputy Brotherton, every time I hear you, I'm just so impressed with your talent, so thank you for sharing those with us today. I also want to say a special thanks to the members of the Medal of Valor Review Board. They considered many nominations and selected today's honorees. We're fortunate to have several members of the review board joining us today. Katie Wiegand-Carr from the St. Louis Metro West Fire Protection District and the chair of the board. Victoria Myers, retired from the Department of Corrections and our senior member on the board. Albert Marshall, retired lieutenant with the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And Greene County Sheriff Jim Arnott, board member. And Department of Public Safety Deputy Director Kevin Bond. Thank you all for your work this year. Also joining us are several members of the Governor's Cabinet. Office of Administration Commissioner Ken Zellers. Department of Corrections Acting Director Trevor Foley. Labor and Industrial Relations Director Anna Hugh. Department of Mental Health Deputy Director Ricky Wright. Department of Health and Senior Services Deputy Director Richard Moore. Thank you all for being here today. Finally, I'd like to introduce our Department of Public Safety Division Directors, or those representing our divisions today. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Flanagan, Missouri State Highway Patrol. Division of Fire Safety Major Scott Stoneberger. Missouri Capitol Police Chief Zim Swartz. Alcohol, Tobacco, and Control State Supervisor Mike Lira. And if I miss someone, my sincerest apologies, but thank you all for being here today. Thousands of first responders are working across Missouri on a 24/7 basis. They perform countless acts worthy of our respect and our attention every day. They view their responsibilities not just as a job, but as a calling. And in Missouri's largest cities and our smallest towns, they share a common motivation, a selfless determination to help those in need. This afternoon, you will learn about some of the most exceptional acts of bravery, resourcefulness, and compassion that took place in our state during 2023. We're honored today that Governor Parson will be making the award presentations. The governor is a proud veteran of our United States Army of 6 years. Following his military service, he spent 22 years in law enforcement, including 2 terms as the Polk County Sheriff. He knows all about the commitment it takes to be a first responder, and he understands and has experienced the sacrifices that families of our first responders have to make in the name of duty. Just over 6 years ago, Governor Parson came into office at a time of great turmoil here in Jefferson City, when Missourians were looking for stability and leadership at the helm of state government. He told everyone then, leadership is not about being the best, but helping others get better. And he's proven that over the last 6 years. And he leads by example. Only 6 weeks after taking office, 17 people were killed in the Branson duck boat tragedy. Governor Parson was there the next morning to meet with first responders, and he went to the hospital to comfort the survivors and their families. The first 100 days Governor Parson was in office was also a time of violence against our law enforcement officers. Governor Parson invited wounded officers and their families to the governor's mansion to honor their heroic service and send a strong message of support. And that message of support continues today for each and every one of our first responders across Missouri. We are grateful for your leadership. Will you please join me in welcoming the 57th governor of the state of Missouri, Governor Mike Parson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Please be seated. Please be seated. First of all, let me just tell you how much of an honor it is here for me to be here today amongst so many fellow officers, fellow emergency responders, and all the ones that are going to be recognized. But I want to take just a moment to thank all of you that are not in those categories, and your family members, your friends, your people that were involved in some of the awards we're going to be doing today. I want to thank you for coming, to taking the time to come to Jeff City to do that today. I also, they recognize a lot of members of my cabinet and a lot of people that do with the state agencies. But the one person, because she is emceeing this thing, didn't get much recognition. So I've got to give a shout out to my Director of Public Safety, Director Karsten, and also mention to you that maybe doesn't know, but she is the only woman commander of the Missouri State Highway Patrol of that, and the only woman director of the Department of Public Safety. Nobody has got that title except her. She won't tell you this, but I will. Nobody gives those titles away. You have to earn them. And I think that's one of the things she's proven time and time again, that she's always been able to help in the times of need. In the introductions, I mean, they got some great notes up here for everybody that's speaking today, but I don't have any. So I'm just going to tell you the experiences I've had. One is a former law enforcement officer of 22 years, and I will start off by a lot of familiar faces in here from different departments I've run across. But unfortunately, a lot of times I run across a lot of people at not the best of times. They're at visitations, they're at funerals, they're at things that occur, and it's never a good time to meet a lot of people. So let me start off by saying this. I'm glad we're here today to honor the recipients that have done some heroic things and have survived some things to be here today. But I also want to make mention to the ones that are not here today that we are going to honor also. But I will encourage all of you, as a person that's kind of lived through this a little bit, it's always very difficult to lose a loved one. There's no question about that. First Lady, we lost her brother as an EMT in the line of duty. That he got killed in the line of duty, and I lost an officer, a sheriff in the line of duty, and definitely for all of us knows how tough a days those are to be able to do that. But the one thing I think that we've learned to live with, my family and people around me, I always said, you always learn how they lived. It's much more important than how they died. It's how they lived and what time was here and what a blessing that was for that period of time that we had them with us. And as we look back now, that's how we remember those people. So the one thing I've always said, as a guy that used to wear the badge, in a frustrating way in our country for a while, people were very disrespectful to people that were in uniforms, that wore badges, that were EMTs, were firefighters, conservation agents, and you can go on down the list that people did that. But the one thing everybody should understand, everybody that does those jobs, every individual that does those jobs does it because most people don't want to do it. They want somebody else to take that risk. They want somebody else to do it. And when it really comes down to it, every day, every hour, there is a call coming in of some kind everywhere in the state of Missouri. It never stops. It never stops. And at time and time again, them calls are answered and answered correctly, and people have put themselves at risk for all of us, is what they've done. It's something that sometimes we take for granted, and we need not take it for granted anymore. It's time for us all to appreciate all the people for the sacrifices they make. And I will tell you, as a former sheriff and a former officer, it's not always about us that wears the uniform. It's about our wives, it's about our children, it's about our mom and dads, it's about all the people that have to live with that burden of being a public servant, because it's not always easy. But I will tell you this, the highest honor I've ever had, and I've had a few of them, all the way from being governor, the highest one I had was my first election. When I ran in my hometown, in my home county, and the people there trusted me to be the sheriff of that county. And the reason I tell you that, those are the people I went to church with, it's the people we went to the grocery stores with, it's the people our kids played ball with, and they trusted you to do a job to keep them safe. Everybody sitting in this room today that's wearing that uniform, that represents an agency. People trust you to do your jobs. People trust you more than you ever know to protect them. Will you ever get told thank you enough? No, you won't. So if you keep worrying about that, you might as well stop. It's just not going to happen. But I'm going to tell you the vast majority of Missourians I do know appreciate emergency personnel. I guarantee you, anywhere I go in the state, St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, you name it, the vast majority of people respect what you guys, what you men and women do every day and what you represent. And don't ever, ever take that for granted. Some little kid's going to look up to you someday and decide who you are and what you represent. So I tell you, that is your time to make sure they have the image that we want to leave in their minds, that you're there as a public servant, number one. Number two, you're there to protect them. That's what we should all strive for in this arena. And remember, as I'll mention to you again, remember the family. Because when those hot calls come in and we're running around out there with lights blaring and we're going to a hot scene, those people don't know what you're walking into. And that worry starts the minute they know you're in that position. So you need to remember sometimes to take the time to talk and explain what this job's about sometime to your family members. Because if you're like some of us, Jim, sometimes we don't want to talk about too much after we've did a lot of things in the line of duty. We kind of code that in ourselves, but I encourage you not to do that, to do that. The other thing I want to say is just thanks for what you do every day. You know, 90% of the time, nobody's going to recognize you for the job you do every day. We're going to have people come up here on the stage pretty soon, and we're going to recognize them for some great things they've done. Matter of fact, I think we're going to be recognizing a little 11-year-old young man up here today that's going to be a part of this ceremony. We're going to be honoring some people that's not able to be here on the stage today because they sacrificed everything for it. But I think to show our support at events like this is what it's all about. And to make sure you go back and tell your fellow colleagues what this ceremony all meant to you. Just don't take for granted every day about what you do. It is a privilege to wear that uniform. It's an honor to wear those uniforms, and you should look at it that way every day. Very few people in the state of Missouri, the 6 million people out there, get to do what you get to do. Very few. And what you do matters. How you conduct yourself matters. How you take care of people matters back home. So for me, this will be the last time I will be speaking to you at this event as governor of the state of Missouri. But I will tell you, you will always have a support of the 57th governor, no matter where I'm at in the future. My job as a citizen, my job as a governor, is to support you every day and to make sure everybody in the state of Missouri knows that I support you. At all costs, I can't waver on that as governor of the state of Missouri. That's what it is we're supposed to do to help you. And we will continue to do that, and I will continue to do that long after I've got any more titles. And I'm sitting back there on the farm somewhere on a John Deere tractor, I hope. I'll be thinking about you, and I mean that every day. And I'll be thinking about you family members who are here today, because I know I can't do what I get to do. I can't live the life I get to live if we don't have the protectors that protect us every day and every night. And they protect my grandkids and your grandkids and our families. So my hat's off to all of you today that are here representing different agencies. I'm grateful to be here when we honor the people we're going to honor today to be part of this ceremony. But as always, it has been an honor and a privilege of a lifetime for me to be the 57th governor of this great state. God bless you, God bless Missouri, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Parson. It is now my pleasure to welcome another leader who has a natural affinity for Missouri's public safety community. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe has been our honored guest at this ceremony in the past and recognizes the service provided by law enforcement and the fire service and our EMS does not come without cost. He is a strong supporter of the men and women who risk their lives to serve and protect, and we're grateful for his attendance today. From humble beginnings, he became a successful businessman, husband, and father. His first elected office was Missouri Senate in 2010. He was reelected in 2014 and appointed to lieutenant governor in 2018. Missourians elected him to a full term in 2020. The lieutenant governor and the second lady are first-generation farmers with a beef cattle production business on the family farm in Phelps and Pulaski counties. And he often opens this farm for our first responders to continue training in swift water or other water requiring needs. He's a full supporter of fire and law enforcement in Missouri. Please join me in welcoming the 48th governor of Missouri. 48th Lieutenant Governor of Missouri. Maybe that's a slip. Mike Kehoe.
Well, thank you, Director Karsten. As the governor mentioned earlier, the director has a career in law enforcement, serving with the Highway Patrol, but DPS 2 has a career as a sheriff for Pettis County, I believe, right, Kevin? So it's great to have the top two people at Department of Public Safety that actually understand the challenges that you face and the challenges your families face. Like the governor, I'm simply here to say thank you, not only to the award recipients for what you've done in your communities, but to the families that supported you. The director mentioned I started in a very different place than where I ended up in central Missouri. I started up in North St. Louis City, and our family was those of Irish immigrants, came over in the late 1800s. And if you were an Irish immigrant that came into St. Louis, you were a policeman or a fireman. I knew no Kehoe in my family that wasn't either a policeman or fireman. That was my whole life. That's the community that I grew up in. And so I'm familiar with the risk and challenges of the first responder community. And I tell people all the time, as the governor mentioned, you're all running in when everybody else is running out. And your families are the ones at home wondering when you're going to come back. And as the governor mentioned, a few today that we're going to honor didn't make it back. The governor and I both went to Officer Carson's service in Lake Ozark last week. And it's an incredibly challenging time for that family, and those other families really will honor today. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, because when they give the ultimate sacrifice, it's something that we should never, ever forget as a state and as a community. But it's always great to be around heroes. As the director said, I've been to this award ceremony several times. The stories and what you've done in your communities are unbelievable. And I'm looking forward to others in this gymnasiums and other in your communities understanding what heroes we have. That's what makes the state of Missouri great. That's really who we are. We don't just know each other, we help each other. And certainly the stories that you're going to hear today exemplify the best of the best in our communities. And it's my privilege, and it's very humbling to be able to be around the men and women we will recognize today. So thank you so much for being here to support each other. Thank you, Director, to you and your team that puts this together. God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Before beginning the presentations, let me share a couple of housekeeping items with you. The photos of today's ceremony will be posted on Governor Parson's Flickr page, which can be accessed directly by going to the governor's website, governor.mo.gov. And the ceremony is being live streamed right now on the Department of Public Safety Facebook page. And if you'd like to view the video later, you can go to the DPS homepage and just click on the Facebook symbol at the top right. That's dps.mo.gov. The order in which the awards will be presented is outlined in the program. Following the final award presentation, we will take a group photo with Governor Parson. Our first award is the Public Safety Civilian Partnership Award for courageous service by a civilian to assist responders in emergency situations. Will Miss Destiny Brandt please come forward and join Governor Parson on stage? On the afternoon of Sunday, August 6, 2023, a vehicle with 5 people inside rolled over on a rain-soaked Highway H a half-mile west of Matthews in southeast Missouri. The overturned vehicle landed in a flooded ditch. Destiny Brandt, who had just graduated from college a few weeks earlier, and her mother were traveling to their home when they spotted the overturned vehicle in the floodwater. Without regard for her own safety, Brandt entered the ditch, swam through 4 feet deep water, and pulled 2 children from the vehicle. Upon arrival, Matthews firefighters quickly went to work and extricated the 3 others still entrapped in the vehicle. All 5 victims recovered from minor injuries. Brandt, who had just left Sunday church services, courageously acted as a true Good Samaritan. She was nominated by the Matthews Volunteer Fire Department. Ms. Brandt, please receive your award, and thank you.
Will Louis Miklovic please come forward and join us on the stage? Louis was nominated by the Missouri State Park Rangers. On September 1st, 2023, tragedy struck during an annual family camping trip to Washington State Park on the border of Washington and Jefferson counties. Joshua Miklovic and his 2 sons had hiked into Bigfoot Cave. As they exited the cave, 6-year-old Peter lost his footing and was teetering off the edge of the bluff. Joshua attempted to pull Peter back, but father and son fell off the bluff and then tumbled down steep, rocky terrain. 11-year-old Louis immediately sprinted to the trailhead parking lot, found a park ranger, and explained the urgent need for help. He then led State Park Ranger Jacob Jenkins to a location where they could observe father and brother. While Ranger Jenkins called for additional assistance, Louis used his cell phone to explain what had occurred to other family members. While Peter was alert with no injuries, his father had suffered a broken back, severe head laceration, and a concussion. First responders created a rope system and rappelled to the victims. The only way to evacuate Joshua, who was in critical condition, was to lower him down the bluff to the big river and then use a small boat to transport him to a park beach and then fly him by helicopter to a hospital. Peter had a minor head laceration that required 9 staples. Joshua required multiple surgeries and 150 stitches to close a 9-inch head laceration. He continues to recover. Despite the trauma of witnessing his father and brother fall from the bluff, Louis immediately went for help, provided complete and accurate information to the Rangers, and remained calm throughout the ordeal. Louis, please receive your award.
Will Mr. Joshua Dunn please come forward and join Governor Parson on stage? Mr. Dunn was nominated by the Missouri State Park Rangers. On September 2nd, 2023, a visitor to Montauk State Park accidentally cut himself in the upper leg with a fillet knife, causing a deep laceration that resulted in a life-threatening loss of blood. A bystander, Joshua Dunn, sprang into action and quickly fashioned a makeshift tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Mr. Dunn tended to the victim until EMS arrived. A helicopter evacuated the victim to a medical facility. Because of the severity of the wound and the loss of blood, Mr. Dunn's care, along with the assistance from a state park ranger and the Montauk Fire Department, likely saved the victim's life. Mr. Dunn, please receive your award.
The next award is the Governor's Medal, which is awarded to a group of first responders whose collective performance as a team is essential in response to a critical incident. I ask Sergeant Wade McElfresh and Tom Thompson and officers Robert Fincher, Dalton Cook, and James Mora of the O'Fallon Police Department to please come forward. On the afternoon of October 10th, 2023, a 13-year-old boy experiencing a mental health crisis ran from his middle school to the Sondern Street overpass over Interstate 70 with the intention of taking his own life by jumping from the overpass. Responding units arrived in less than 3 minutes and found the boy straddling the concrete barrier over I-70. Officers Mora, Cook, and Fincher made contact with the boy and worked to establish a rapport with him, but he only wanted to speak with Officer Mora. Meanwhile, Sergeant Thompson supervised the scene on the overpass and staged firefighters and ambulance personnel to be able to render first aid. Sergeant McElfresh closed the interstate and then directed that several tractor trailers be positioned under the overpass to break the juvenile's fall if necessary. Because the boy was swinging both his legs over the bridge ledge with nothing but the interstate beneath him, Officer Mora repeatedly inched closer. Mora closed the distance between them by displaying pictures of his dog on his cell phone, but the boy was still in crisis. Once he was close enough and the boy became distracted, Officer Mora risked his own life by lunging at the boy and then began pulling him back from the ledge. Officers Cook and Fincher helped secure the juvenile, who was quite large for his age. Other officers assisted Officer Mora in getting the boy back to a safe position on the bridge. During a pressure-filled life-or-death incident over loud, swift-moving interstate traffic, with a distraught boy's life hanging in the balance, Sergeants McElfresh and Thompson and Officers Fincher, Cook, and Mora demonstrated compassion, creative thinking, teamwork, and unflinching determination in order to save a life. Sergeant Wade McElfresh, please receive your award. Sergeant Tom Thompson, please receive your award. Officer Robert Fincher, please receive your award. Officer Dalton Cook, please receive your award. Officer James Mora, please receive your award.
Corrections Officer Sherry Ann Ward of the Department of Corrections, Miss Bonnie Barnett, could you please come forward, or Acting Director Trevor Foley in their absence. On the afternoon of November 16th, 2023, in the Jefferson City Correctional Center Housing Unit 3, an officer instructed an offender to return to his cell from an area considered out of bounds. Officer Ward was requested to assist in attempting to gain compliance. Once Officer Ward arrived at the scene, the offender struck her in the face with a closed fist several times. The offender then pulled a 7-inch metal prison-made weapon and began slashing and stabbing the other officer in the head, face, and arm. Sergeant Elzey observed the struggle from outside the wing, gained access, and helped the officers take the offender to the floor. Sergeant Elzey then got the weapon away from the offender. Officer Ward was then able to fully restrain the offender. Officer Ward suffered a puncture wound and bruising and swelling to her face. Sergeant Elzey and Officer Ward, who like all corrections officers serve without firearms, risked their own lives to control a violent offender who possessed a lethal weapon. Sherry Ann Ward has since been promoted to sergeant, and sadly, Sergeant Elzey died unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm on June 9th, 2024. She was 48. Her mother will receive her award. Ms. Barnett, please accept Sergeant Elzey's award with our deepest thanks and our deepest condolences. DOC Acting Director Trevor Foley will receive the award for Officer Ward.
Our next award is the Missouri Medal of Valor, our state's highest public safety award for extraordinary life-saving acts. Sergeant Jacob Peck and Officers Sean Goodwin and Dakota Harrington of the Sikeston Department of Public Safety, please come forward and join us on stage. Just before 1 a.m. on February 6, 2023, Officers Peck, Harrington, and Goodwin responded to a residential area for reports of a person shot and began canvassing the area for a suspect. They then received information that the suspect was believed to be close to a pool in a nearby apartment complex. The three officers resumed their search in that area and located a female juvenile outside the suspect's apartment. The girl told the officers the suspect had entered the apartment armed with a pistol a few minutes earlier and said he intended to kill himself. She also said her 12-year-old brother was still inside the apartment. The officers then heard a single gunshot from inside the apartment. Fearing for the safety of the child and without regard for their own safety, Officers Peck, Goodwin, and Harrington immediately ran to the apartment door, forced it open, and located the 12-year-old lying in bed near the door. As the officers began getting the child up to remove him from the apartment, the suspect opened fire from a bedroom, firing about a half-dozen shots at the officers. Despite being under fire, the officers managed to get the child out of the apartment and to safety. The Sikeston Department's tactical team and negotiators later arrested the gunman without further incident. When the life of an innocent child was at risk, Officers Peak, Goodwin, and Harrington acted without hesitation to protect the child despite the danger a suicidal gunman posed to themselves. Jacob Peck was promoted to sergeant in May 2023. Sergeant Peck, please receive your award. Officer Goodwin, please receive your award. Officer Harrington, please receive your award.
Officers Sean Miskovic and Lucas Roethlisberger, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, please come forward. On the night of February 2nd, 2023, Officers Muskovic and Roethlisberger were on patrol in a marked vehicle in the Soulard neighborhood when they spotted a pickup truck with no license plates. It matched the description of a vehicle wanted in connection with a robbery 2 days earlier. The officers radioed their location as they began following the vehicle. Once notified another patrol vehicle was in the area, the officers activated their lights and siren. The suspect vehicle then led the officers through the Soulard neighborhood and crashed into a courtyard. As Officers Muskovic approached the suspect vehicle, the driver exited with a handgun and began firing upon both officers. Officer Muskovic took cover behind a tree and fired a round from his handgun, which then jammed. As Officer Muskovic attempted to clear his weapon, Officer Roethlisberger fired at the suspect and took cover. Officer Muskovic, with a new magazine, fired another round, but his gun jammed again. When the gunman took off on foot, both Muskovic and Roethlisberger pursued him despite having been shot. The suspect had been struck by a bullet in his right leg. The suspect discarded the gun as he ran, and Officer Roethlisberger captured him. Arriving officers drove Muskovic to Barnes Hospital and took Officer Roethlisberger to the St. Louis University Hospital. Officer Roethlisberger was treated for gunshot wounds and then released, and he insisted on going to Barnes Hospital to be with his partner. Officer Muskovic was treated and released the following day. The gunman was a convicted felon in possession of a large quantity of suspected narcotics in the stolen vehicle. In addition to being shot, the officer's police vehicle was struck by at least 13 rounds. Under heavy fire and despite being wounded, Officers Muskovic and Roethlisberger acted with tremendous bravery, removing a dangerous felon from the streets of St. Louis. Sean Muskovic is now an officer with the Olivet Police Department. Officer Muskovic, please receive your award. Officer Roethlisberger, please receive your award.
Officer Jeffrey Klaus of the Ferguson Police Department, please come forward and join us on the stage. On March 17, 2023, Officer Klaus responded to a call for a person in crisis at Ferguson's January Wabash Park. The man was naked and suffering from a mental episode and ran into the park's lake and appeared to be attempting to drown himself in the frigid water. Without hesitation, Officer Klaus removed his duty belt and emptied his pockets, jumping into the lake. Once Officer Klaus reached him, the man kicked and shoved Klaus away. However, Officer Klaus overcame the resistance and managed to subdue the man and then safely bring him back to the edge of the lake, lifting him so that assisting officers could pull him from the water. When a man was experiencing a mental health crisis and endangering his own life, Officer Klaus acted with swift determination and successfully rescued the man, despite his efforts to thwart the rescue effort. Officer Klaus, please receive your award.
Officers Channing Cochran and David Ostendorp of the Independence Police Department, please come forward. On April 17th, 2023, Officers Cochran and Ostendorp were dispatched to a traffic crash with injuries on U.S. Highway 40 and 47th Street in Independence. Upon arrival, one of the vehicles was on fire with a passenger trapped inside. The driver had been able to exit the vehicle with a 2-month-old child, but the other passenger had a serious leg injury that prevented him from getting out, and he was slipping in and out of consciousness. Officers Cochran and Ostendorf fought through intense heat and smoke as they worked to free the victim, and the fire encroached upon the passenger compartment. They were able to pull the victim out of the vehicle and drag him to safety only seconds before the fire intensified and reached the interior of the vehicle. With time running short and an injured man trapped inside a burning vehicle, Officers Cochran and Ostendorf acted swiftly and with single-minded determination saved the victim. Officer Cochran, please receive your award. Officer Ostendorf, please receive your award.
Corporal Travis Sanders of the Greene County Sheriff's Office, please come forward and join us on the stage. At about 10 a.m. on April 23, 2023, Corporal Sanders responded to an isolated rural area in Greene County after a man wearing an ankle monitor left a suicide note for his family and made suicidal statements. He said he intended to kill himself rather than go back to prison. The subject was tracked to his location through the ankle monitor. Corporal Sanders located the subject as he appeared to be drowning in Pickerel Creek close to the confluence with the Big Sac River. He was in 3 to 4 feet of water, bent forward into floating brush with his head in the water. He was sucking in water as he breathed, gasping and vomiting. From the creek bank, Corporal Sanders attempted to keep the subject's head out of the water without success. Corporal Sanders then removed his duty belt, entered the chilly water, and pulled the subject to the bank, where a civilian helped pull him out of the water. Fire and EMS radios did not work in the isolated area, and the ambulance could not traverse woods and fields to the creek. For this reason, a helicopter was requested. To get the patient to the helicopter's landing area required Corporal Sanders and another officer to secure the patient to a stretcher and carry him across the creek and up a steep embankment. The patient was transported to a hospital and received life-saving treatment. With a man's life in grave risk, Corporal Sanders thought creatively and acted decisively, overcoming many obstacles in the process of helping save a man's life. Corporal Sanders, please receive your award.
Officers Nicholas Jones and William Stevenson of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, please come forward. Officer Alfred Allman, Jr. was not able to join us today. On the afternoon of April 28, 2023, Officers Jones and Stevenson responded to an apartment building in the Skinker neighborhood, where relatives requested assistance with a man in the mental health crisis. At the apartment, they located the subject on a bathroom floor. EMS was called and responded. Officer Jones and Stevenson and a crisis response unit clinician attempted to talk with the man. Jones and Stevenson then attempted to lift the man from the floor when he pulled a concealed pistol and fired 2 shots, striking Officer Stevenson in the right shoulder. The porcelain toilet was broken into several sharp pieces during the violent struggle as the officers worked to get the gun away from the subject and bring him under control. Officer Jones received a head injury in the struggle, and Officer Allman, who had responded to an officer in need of aid call, suffered a large laceration to his left arm. Officers Stevenson and Allman were transported to Barnes Hospital. Officer Stevenson was treated for 4 puncture wounds to his right shoulder and released. Officer Allman received stitches for the laceration on his arm. Officer Jones refused treatment at the scene. The gunman was treated for a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his right hand and underwent a psychiatric evaluation. Despite being injured, the officers worked together to control a violent gunman and never fired a shot, despite the danger he posed. Officer Jones, please receive your award. Officer Stevenson, please receive your award.
Deputy Sheriff Chris Coleman of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, please come forward and join us on the stage. On May 21st, 2023, Deputy Sheriff Chris Coleman responded to a motor vehicle crash on Highway T near the intersection with Fiddle Creek Road. There were down power lines, so Deputy Coleman closed Highway T. While directing traffic, he saw that an Ameren, Missouri truck had arrived, and shortly after, he noticed smoke coming from the truck. Deputy Coleman grabbed a fire extinguisher from his patrol vehicle, and as he headed to the Ameren truck, he saw that the lineman was touching the truck, which was also in contact with a live wire. He extinguished the flames and, risking safety to protect the lineman, grabbed the man by his pants leg and pulled him away from the electrified truck. The man was suffering from life-threatening injuries. Deputy Coleman called for medical assistance, warning that the truck posed a grave danger. EMS arrived on scene and rendered aid to the lineman. Deputy Coleman then observed the truck was again igniting and extinguished the flames as the medical team cared for the lineman just a few feet away from the truck. The victim was transported by helicopter to a hospital and survived his injuries. Deputy Coleman had alertly responded to a dynamic scene, and his quick thinking helped save the lineman's life. Deputy Coleman, please receive your award.
Master Sergeant Lance DeClue, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, please come forward. On the morning of July 28, 2023, Master Sergeant DeClue heard radio traffic indicating a Crawford County Sheriff's deputy was in pursuit of a stolen vehicle on Route B, and the suspect had fired several rounds from a handgun out his window toward the deputy. The deputy said the driver was headed toward Westover Road. Master Sergeant DeClue drove to Westover Road to deploy a tire deflation device, but the pursuit had already passed that location. The gunman was now reported to be passing in no passing zones and almost struck an oncoming vehicle head-on. Master Sergeant DeClue monitored traffic to figure out the next location where he could attempt a tire deflation and settled on Highway 49. But the gunman began crashing through gates into the Doe Run mine property. DeClue then observed the vehicle turning around where one of the Doe Run mine roads came to a dead end. He was now moving head-on toward DeClue's patrol vehicle on a one-lane road. DeClue determined he needed to end the pursuit immediately because the subject had already fired at a deputy and attempted to ram civilian vehicles. DeClue cut the wheel of his patrol vehicle and rammed the suspect vehicle, disabling it. He then exited his vehicle, drew his handgun, and ordered the subject to show his hands. The subject complied and was taken into custody. Throughout a dangerous ordeal in which the subject endangered the lives of many people, including DeClue, Master Sergeant remained calm, methodical, and determined to take the safest course of action, ultimately risking his own safety in order to capture the subject. Master Sergeant DeClue, please receive your award.
Officers Larry Bunt Jr. and Clint Kuntz of the O'Fallon Police Department, please come forward and join us on the stage. On the afternoon of December 3rd, 2023, a gunman fired at least 3 shots at the clock tower in front of the O'Fallon City Hall. Officer Kuntz saw a vehicle matching the broadcasted vehicle description driving north on Main Street and quickly caught up with the suspect. He initiated a traffic stop and the suspect pulled over. Officer Kuntz exited his vehicle, took up a cover position, and issued commands to the suspect. The suspect ignored the orders, threw his hands up and down, and reached inside his vehicle. He then got back into the vehicle and drove off. As he was fleeing, Officer Bunt was arriving on scene and took the primary unit position in an authorized pursuit. Officer Kuntz followed as the secondary unit. The gunman drove west on Highway P and entered a subdivision, coming to stop in a cul-de-sac. He immediately exited the vehicle with his shotgun raised in the direction of both of the officers. The officers, fearing for their lives and the safety of the public, exchanged fire with the gunman, who then took cover at the front of his vehicle. Officer Kuntz and Bunt repositioned themselves for better cover. The gunman then stood up and pointed his shotgun at the officers, attempting to fire as he ran into an open field. The officers fired again, striking the gunman, who went down but continued to move with the shotgun by his side. Officers Kuntz and Bunt took cover and waited for additional officers to arrive. Once sufficient officers were on scene, Officers Kuntz organized a team to take the gunman into custody. When officers reached the gunman, he was deceased. Officer Kuntz and Bunt, despite being under fire and extreme stress, put their own lives at risk in order to protect the public and contain a violent threat to the community. Officer Bunt, please receive your award. Officer Kuntz, please receive your award.
Firefighter paramedic Drew Goodale of the Cape Girardeau Fire Department, please come forward. On the evening of December 13th, 2023, firefighter paramedic Goodale was having dinner in a restaurant in New Hamburg, Missouri, when a civilian came in and reported a house was on fire down the street. Goodale and the restaurant owner drove the short distance to the house. Flames were showing from a first-floor window, and about 25% of the house was involved in fire. Goodale opened the front door to check if anyone was inside. He heard a person moaning in pain. Entering without any protective gear, he found the severely burned owner of the house about 20 feet from the door. Firefighter paramedic Goodale pulled the man out of the burning structure and onto the porch. Goodale and the restaurant owner then moved the victim to the yard. The two provided first aid until fire and EMS personnel arrived. Goodale assisted in the ambulance as the victim was moved to a landing zone for an air evacuation. The victim was intubated on the scene and flown to a hospital with severe burns. The victim spent about a week recovering in the hospital. Because of firefighter paramedic Goodale's swift and brave actions while off duty outside of his own jurisdiction, the victim was rescued from his burning home in minutes. Firefighter Goodale is now a member of the St. Charles Fire Department. Firefighter Goodale, please receive your award.
Officer Justin McElroy of the St. Joseph Police Department, please come forward and join us on the stage. On the night of December 26, 2023, Officer McElroy recognized a U-Haul box truck as the suspect vehicle in a commercial theft from earlier in the day. He notified dispatch and attempted to make a traffic stop. He then pursued the vehicle when the driver failed to stop. The pursuit lasted for about 3 miles, during which another St. Joseph police officer deployed a tire deflation device, damaging several of the tires. One woman also called 911 saying she was a passenger in the truck. The truck then left the roadway in an industrial area where it became stuck on railroad tracks. Officer McElroy exited his vehicle and ran to the truck, taking cover at the rear. As he peered around the back of the truck, he observed the driver partially open the door, aiming a gun in Officer McElroy's direction. Officer McElroy broke from his cover position and fired at the gunman, striking the door and the frame of the truck. The gunman fell from the vehicle with his gun and indicated he had been shot. Backup officers had arrived and now secured the passenger, who was unharmed. Officer McElroy quickly moved to the gunman and attempted to render aid. The gunman was found to not have been shot and was taken into custody. During a highly stressful pursuit and confrontation with an armed convicted felon, Officer McElroy remained calm, took account of the passenger in the stolen vehicle, and kept fellow officers informed at all times. His courageous efforts ended a dangerous situation for himself, his fellow officers, and the community. Officer McElroy, please receive your award.
We will now present our final Missouri Public Safety Award. The Red, White, and Blue Heart Award is an annual medal that honors first responders whose courageous public service leads to serious injuries or death as they honorably carry out their official duties. This award recognizes those who have sacrificed much. 2 of the Red, White, and Blue Heart Awards are being awarded posthumously. Our first recipient is Kansas City Police Department Officer James Mulbauer, who was working with his canine partner, Champ. Will Major Tim Hernandez come forward to please join us on stage? On February 15th, 2023, Officer Mulbauer and Canine Champ were in their patrol vehicle eastbound on East Truman Road with a green light when a driver ran through a red light at Benton Boulevard and crashed his vehicle into theirs. The motorist, who was driving at approximately 89 miles per hour, also killed a pedestrian at the scene. Officer Mulbauer devoted his life to protecting the residents of Kansas City, and for 20 years he excelled in his chosen profession, including in 2014 when he arrested a notorious murderer who had just killed 5 people. For the last year of their lives, Mulbauer and Canine Champ were inseparable as partners and guardians of the community. Major Hernandez, please accept Officer Mulbauer's Red, White, and Blue Heart Award with our deepest gratitude for his service.
Our next Red, White, and Blue Heart Award recipient are Detective Sergeant Mason Griffith and Officer Adam Sullentrup of the Herman Police Department. Will Jennifer and Karsten Griffith join us on the stage? They are the wife and son of Detective Sergeant Mason Griffith. And will Officer Adam Sullentrup please join us, accompanied by his wife, Michelle? At about 9:30 p.m. on March 12, 2023, Detective Sergeant Mason Griffith and Officer Alan Sullentrup responded to a disturbance call at the Casey's convenience store on Highway 19 in Herman. When the officers arrived, both were shot by a gunman who was wanted for multiple outstanding felony arrest warrants. The officers returned fire, but the gunman fled. He was captured the following day after barricading himself in a house. Detective Sergeant Griffith was shot in the chest and died from his injuries at Herman Area District Hospital. Griffith, 34, also served as the chief of the Rosebud Police Department and was known for being accessible to residents at all hours and had a history of de-escalating many situations in which individuals were experiencing behavioral health crises. Officer Sullentrup was shot in the head and suffered a traumatic head injury. Because of the extent of his injuries, he spent several months in a rehabilitation hospital in California before returning home in November 2023. Officer Sullentrup undergoes continuing physical therapy and will remain on disability for the remainder of his life because of the extent of his injuries. Ms. Griffith and Karsten, please accept Detective Sergeant Griffith's Red, White, and Blue Heart Award with our deepest gratitude for Mason's devoted and faithful service. Officer Sullentrup, please accept your Red, White, and Blue Heart Award.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been reminded once again of the extraordinary sacrifices our first responders make to answer the call and protect our Missourians. Officer Sullentrup bears the scars of his service. Detective Sergeant Griffith and Officer Mulbauer pay the ultimate price for their public service. Their families will forever bear the burden of having lost their loved one, and we pray the memory of them helps sustain them. Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of these two heroes. Thank you. Each of today's accounts serve as a testament to the brave and honorable service of Missouri's first responders. The civilians we honor today also exhibited decisiveness and selflessness under pressure. On behalf of the Department of Public Safety, we extend our congratulations to our award recipients and our thanks for their willingness to serve others. We extend our support and prayers for their families, and especially the family and friends of those first responders who made the ultimate sacrifice. Special thanks to those who submitted nominations to highlight the work of these heroes. Thanks to our chiefs, our sheriffs, our colonels, and commanders of these public safety professionals. Your leadership and values are reflected in their actions. And thanks to all of you for joining today to recognize our extraordinary award winners. I'd like to say a special thanks to the Missouri State Highway Patrol Lieutenant Colonel Tony Flanagan for hosting our ceremony today, and Captain Scott White in the Public Information and Education Division for their support and the excellent photography work that they deliver each year. Thanks also to the Office of Administration video team for providing the Facebook live stream today. And thanks to the Patrol Academy staff for setting up for this event. And I want to say a special thanks to a person who has worked very hard on this ceremony to make sure all the details and the medals and everything were here and organized. And that's Judy Murray, our DPS Medals Program Coordinator. And to our other DPS team members, Hallie Herbert, Jason Bushjos, Aaron Sinner, Mike O'Connell, Austin Davis, and Kylie Dicknight for their assistance in this ceremony. This almost concludes our event. We'd ask for all the honorees to briefly join us on stage so we can take a photo with Governor Parson. And all guests and family members, you're invited to come up front and take those photos. Also, the governor has generously agreed to take part in photos of the award winners and their families. So if you could gather on the, and be my right, your left side of the dais, we'll make sure that you get your photos with Governor Parson. Again, thank you for joining us today. I do want to say a special thanks to Governor Parson. With this being his last time, he certainly has been a longtime supporter of us in this ceremony. So thank you, Governor, for being here. Thank you all again, and we wish you much safety as you return to your homes. Thank you.